Okay, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to spend a few minutes looking at ways to improve your writing. If you take a look at the whiteboard behind me, we've talked a little bit about this in class, but my hopes is this video will help reinforce some of the concepts we've already looked at. We're talking about sentence combining, and we've been doing that a little bit with appositives. And again, using appositives are one great way to make your writing more concise and to improve your readability. And that matters because educated people can see that when you're able to do it. So today we're going to continue that, talking about sentence combining with coordinating conjunctions, also known as fanboys. And if you think back to your Saturday morning cartoon experiences, conjunction, junction, what's your function? Your function, conjunction, is to join two complete thoughts in writing. It's a very effective tool, very simplistic tool to become familiar with, but like anything else, if you don't continually apply it when the time arises to do that, you usually don't. So it all comes back to our first composition formula we've talked about in class. And composition formulas are good tools to remember some complex things in writing. For example, if you take a look at the first composition formula, number 1, you're going to notice that we can join two independent clauses with a comma and one of the 7 coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, or fanboys. Again, a very simplistic way, memory-wise, to remember one of the functions of these particular 7 words. So, thinking back to an English class or a language arts class you probably had before, you're going to probably remember that your independent clauses, or ICs, are essentially complete thoughts. They have a subject and a verb, and they can stand by themselves. And that's important to understand because that's the building block of other composition formulas. So if you take a look at the sentences behind me, the first one, I wrote this morning: I think Honey Boo Boo is a terrible show. And I really do. People watch it all the time. If I take a look at this first sentence that I came up with, if I were to bracket from the I to the show, most people are going to recognize that that's a complete thought, right? It's an independent clause. Now that's nice to know. The names are nice to know, but how can I apply that and make my writing better? Before we do that, if you look at that, notice what happens when I add one word in front of it. That word could be if. That word could be while. That word could be because. If I think Honey Boo Boo is a terrible show, while I think Honey Boo Boo is a terrible show, or because I think Honey Boo Boo is a terrible show, you should be able to note that that changes this from independent to dependent, or DC is our formula. And that's important because that's the foundation, again, for building on these other composition formulas. And most of you can recognize that. So we'll move on. So going back to my original passage, I think Honey Boo Boo is a terrible show. People watch it all the time. Here I have 2 independent clauses. Subject verb can stand by itself, is a complete thought. Okay, again, that's different than your dependent clauses, which may also have a subject and verb, but something needs to finish that, and that will be a complete thought to actually finish that. So if we come back to this passage, our composition formula tells us we can join 2 complete thoughts or independent clauses with a comma. It's important to have that comma there. And then one of those conjunctions. And notice each one of the conjunctions has a different function. But essentially they can be categorized one of 2 ways. They're either going to add information to the statement before it or contradict it. For example, and would be used to add information. But would be used to contradict information that comes in the first independent clause. Yet would also serve that same function. So back to the initial one, our formula says I can join it with two complete thoughts with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. I think Honey Boo Boo is a terrible show. I could go with yet. I could go with but. Can't really go with nor. We'll talk about that in a separate segment. That's got a different function. And might not be the best choice. I'm going to choose yet. Yet there. So I will put a comma there. Can't really fit it too well. Put the conjunction yet. Now I've made this sentence from two simplistic sentences to a nice compound sentence using our composition formula number 1. Okay, so pretty simplistic stuff. The second example, the English teacher wanted to make learning available around the clock. He began videotaping his lectures. Same thing, we can recognize this as two complete thoughts. Independent clauses, bracket those, I see. Our composition formula, again, independent clause, comma, fanboys, one of these words, for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And join that second independent clause with those two devices. So I'm going to use the conjunction. So put a comma there, comma, so he began videotaping his lectures. Okay, nice looking sentences. Again, a very simplistic way, but you have to practice it for it to become second nature. Very simplistic way to improve your writing, to send the message to the readers of your writing that you're educated and you paid attention in English class, which is great. Get the gold star for the day. The last thing I want to point out here, and we'll talk about more of this in class, is my sample sentence right down here. Bill walked his dog and ate pizza for lunch. Bill walked his dog and ate pizza for lunch. I don't know Bill, I don't know if he did either one of those things. The point of emphasis on this, Bill walked his dog. Again, that's a complete thought. Subject, verb can stand by itself, independent clause. The second one, ate pizza for lunch. He ate pizza for lunch. The subject isn't explicitly stated there. It doesn't say Bill ate pizza for lunch, but it's the only possible subject being talked about because it's introduced in the first independent clause. So the takeaway is twofold from this short passage. So if you're taking notes right now, jot this down as an exception. The grammarians or the keepers of the language say that no comma should be used with short clauses when you're joining them in this manner. So Bill walked his dog. We want to avoid putting that comma there, even though it's a complete thought. We're joining a second one. We want to avoid putting that comma there because it is a short clause, and the reader isn't anticipating pausing right there. There's no need to pause. Whereas some of these are a little lengthier, and that's what the comma does there. So if we look at this last one, ate pizza for lunch, it doesn't necessarily have the subject stated as we would expect, but it is implied. So since it's implied, it would still be considered applicable under this formula. So the takeaway is twofold. No comma with short clauses, and it's okay to have the second clause, the subject of the second clause, implied when there's no room for interpretation. So that means we don't have to state it explicitly instead of putting the he, if that makes sense. So again, we'll come back to more of this stuff in class. This should just serve as a brief introductory note on sentence combined with coordinating conjunctions.